In my 40 years on the bench, I've seen just about every human emotion you can imagine walk through those mahogany doors. I've seen the heartbreak of families torn apart, the quiet dignity of those who have nothing left but their integrity, and the genuine remorse of people who simply made a terrible mistake. But every so often, a case comes along that doesn't just challenge the law, it challenges our basic sense of human decency. I'm talking about a case that stayed with me long after the gavel fell. It involved a young woman, the daughter of a prominent senator, and a 70-year-old man who had spent his life working hard in the shadows to keep our city clean. What shocked me wasn't just the crime itself, but the utter lack of humanity shown in the aftermath. I looked at this young woman, and I saw someone who believed that her father's title made her untouchable, and that a man's honest labor made him invisible. I knew right then that this wouldn't be a typical morning in court. I had a lesson to teach, and she was about to learn that in my courtroom, a senator's daughter and a janitor stand on the exact same floor. When this case file first landed on my desk on a rainy Tuesday morning, I didn't know who the parties were. I just saw the charges: disorderly conduct, simple assault, and harassment. Standard fare for a municipal court, or so I thought. But as I opened the folder and began to read the police report, the names started to jump off the page. The defendant was Isabella Vance. Her father is a high-ranking state senator, a man I've met at civic functions over the years. But in my courtroom, a last name is just a collection of letters. What concerned me was the victim, Mr. Arthur Higgins. Arthur is 70 years old. He's a widower, a grandfather, and for the last 30 years, he has worked as the night janitor at the city administration building. According to the initial report, there had been a confrontation in the lobby late on a Friday night. As I read the witness statements, my heart began to heavy. It's one thing to have a dispute. It's another thing entirely to treat another human being as if they are beneath notice. I remember sitting back in my chair, looking out the window at the Providence skyline, and thinking to myself, Frank, you're going to need to keep a very level head today. I pride myself on being a patient man, but I have a very low tolerance for bullies. Let me walk you through what happened that night, based on the evidence I spent hours reviewing before the hearing even began. It was shortly after 11 p.m. Mr. Higgins, Arthur, was doing what he has done faithfully for 3 decades. He was mopping the marble floors of the main lobby. He had his "Caution wet floor" signs out. He was just trying to finish his shift so he could go home to his dog and get some rest. Isabella Vance had been at a gala upstairs with her father. Witnesses say she had been drinking, though she wasn't charged with a DUI. She was leaving the building in a hurry, distracted by her phone. According to the security footage, which I watched 3 times because I couldn't believe my eyes, she walked right past the yellow warning signs and slipped. She didn't fall hard. She caught herself on a railing, but she was embarrassed. And in her world, apparently, when you are embarrassed, someone else must pay the price. She didn't apologize for missing the signs. She didn't laugh it off. Instead, she turned on Arthur. The security footage doesn't have audio, but the body language told the whole story. She was pointing her finger in his face, her body tensed with rage. Arthur, bless his heart, just stood there with his mop in his hand, his head slightly bowed. He looked like he was trying to apologize for a floor being wet while he was mopping it. Then the moment happened. The moment that changed this from a civil disagreement into a criminal matter. Isabella Vance stepped forward, looked Arthur right in the eye, and spat directly into his face. When I watched that video, I felt a knot in my stomach. I've seen fights, I've seen thefts, I've seen property damage, but spitting on someone, especially an elderly man who is simply working an honest job, it is the ultimate gesture of disrespect. It says, I don't even consider you a person. I knew right then that I wasn't just looking at a legal violation, I was looking at a profound moral failure. As I continued reviewing the evidence, the situation only grew more dire. I examined the medical report from the night of the arrest. While Arthur wasn't physically injured in the sense of broken bones, the psychological impact on a 70-year-old man being assaulted in such a degrading way is massive. He had to undergo blood testing for communicable diseases, a terrifying process for anyone, let alone someone of his age, because of her actions. I read the statements from the two security guards who intervened. They reported that when they tried to calm Miss Vance down, she screamed at them, "Do you have any idea who my father is? This old man is a nobody. He ruined my shoes." That phrase stayed with me. This old man is a nobody. I looked at the photos of the scene. I saw the scuff marks on her designer heels, and then I saw the photo of Arthur sitting on a bench afterward, his face wiped clean but his eyes full of a deep, quiet shame. He wasn't angry in the photos, he just looked tired of being treated like he didn't matter. As a judge, my job is to weigh the facts. The facts were clear. There was no provocation. There was no both sides to this story. There was a young woman with a sense of entitlement that had spiraled into physical assault, and a victim whose only crime was being in the way of a senator's daughter's ego. By the time the court date arrived, the story had caught fire. In today's world, nothing stays quiet, especially when it involves a political family. Someone had leaked the security footage to social media, and by Monday morning, it had millions of views. My clerk, Ziggy, came into my chambers and said, "Judge, have you seen the news? People are calling for her head." I told him what I tell everyone. I don't rule based on hashtags. There was a lot of pressure. I received letters, some demanding I lock her up and throw away the key. Others from friends of the senator suggesting that young people make mistakes. None of it mattered to me. My commitment is to the law and to the dignity of my courtroom. I knew the cameras would be there. I knew the world was watching, but my focus wasn't on the millions of people online. It was on the two people who would be standing in front of my bench. Whether a case has 0 views or 80 million, the process remains the same. Everyone gets a fair shake, but everyone, regardless of their father's bank account, must answer for what they've done. The day of the hearing, the courtroom was packed. I could feel the tension as soon as I walked in. I took my seat, adjusted my robes, and looked out. There was Arthur Higgins sitting in the front row, wearing a clean pressed suit that looked like it hadn't been worn in years. He looked nervous. Then Isabella Vance walked in. She was dressed in very expensive morning black clothes, hidden behind large sunglasses, until her lawyer whispered for her to take them off. She didn't look nervous. She looked annoyed. She looked like this was a massive inconvenience to her social calendar. I called the case. State versus Isabella Vance. I started by asking the prosecution to lay out the facts. They played the video on the monitors. I watched Isabella while the video played. She didn't look at the screen. She looked at her fingernails. She actually sighed when the part where she spat on Arthur came on. I looked at her and said, "Miss Vance, you seem bored. Is this procedure beneath you?" She looked up, startled. "No, Your Honor. I just think we've all seen the video. I'm ready to pay the fine and go." I felt my blood pressure rise, but I kept my voice calm. "You're ready to pay the fine and go? Miss Vance, we aren't talking about a parking ticket. We are talking about the dignity of a human being." I turned to Arthur. "Mr. Higgins, would you like to say something?" Arthur stood up slowly. His voice trembled. "Your Honor," he said, "I've worked in that building for 30 years. I've mopped for mayors, for governors, for everyone. I never asked for much. But when she did that, I felt like I was less than the dirt I was cleaning up. I couldn't look my grandson in the eye for 3 days because I felt so ashamed." The room went silent. I looked at Isabella. She rolled her eyes. She actually rolled her eyes at a 70-year-old man's pain. Then my bailiff approached the bench. He handed me a printout. "Your Honor," he whispered, "this was posted 20 minutes ago." It was a screenshot from Isabella's private Instagram. It was a selfie of her in the courtroom hallway with the caption, "In court with this Judge Caprio guy everyone loves. He's being so dramatic over a little spit. Can't wait to get out of here and go to brunch. Free Isabella." I felt a chill go through the room as I turned the monitor around so she could see it. "Miss Vance," I began, "I want you to understand something. I've been a judge for 40 years. I've sat on this bench and watched the world change, but one thing that never changes is the requirement for basic human respect. You come from a family of privilege. You've been given every advantage, and yet you stand here today with less character than the man you insulted. You called him a nobody. Well, let me tell you who Arthur Higgins is. He is a man who showed up for work for 30 years to provide for his family. He is a man who contributes to the fabric of this city. He is a man who, despite what you did to him, sat there and spoke with more grace than you could ever hope to possess. You think you can pay a fine and go to brunch? You think your father's position is a get-out-of-jail-free card? Not in my courtroom, not today. I looked down at my notes. On the charge of simple assault, I'm sentencing you to the maximum allowed by this court, 30 days in the county jail. The courtroom gasped. Isabella's mouth fell open. Jail? You can't put me in jail? I just did, I said firmly. But I'm not finished. Upon your release, you will perform 200 hours of community service, and it won't be in an office. You will be assigned to the city sanitation department. You will be cleaning the very floors you think you're too good to walk on. You will learn what honest work looks like. Furthermore, I continued, you will pay restitution for all medical testing Mr. Higgins had to undergo, and you will write a formal, handwritten letter of apology, not to me, not to the court, but to Mr. Higgins. And it better be sincere, because if I don't think it is, you'll be back in front of me for a probation violation. Miss Vance, I said, my voice dropping an octave. Is this your account? She turned pale. It was a joke, Your Honor. My friends, a joke? I interrupted. You think assaulting a man who has worked harder in a week than you have in your entire life is a joke. You think the trauma you caused him is dramatic? I looked at the Snapchat messages. I looked at her lawyer, who was currently burying his face in his hands. I had been patient. I had tried to give her the benefit of the doubt that maybe, just maybe, she was scared and acting out. But this was a window into a soul that lacked a compass. I've been doing this a long time, I told her. I've seen people who have nothing give everything to show respect, and I've seen people who have everything give nothing. You, Miss Vance, fall into the latter category. I took a long breath. I wanted to make sure my words were measured because I knew they would carry weight. I looked at her one last time. This sentence isn't about punishment, Miss Vance. It's about accountability. It's about teaching you that the nobodies of this world are the ones who keep it running. I hope you use those 30 days to think about the person you've become and the person you want to be. After I adjourned the court, the room stayed quiet for a long time. The bailiff stepped forward to take Isabella into custody. The brunch she had posted about was canceled. As she was being led away, the reality finally hit her. She started to cry. Not the quiet, reflective kind of crying, but the loud, shocked realization that for the first time in her life, no meant no. Arthur Higgins came up to the bench afterward. He didn't gloat. He didn't cheer. He just reached out his hand and said, "Thank you, Judge. I just wanted to feel like a person again." I shook his hand. "Arthur," I said, "you were always a person." She was the one who forgot how to be one. That evening, I sat in my office and watched the news. The video of the sentencing was everywhere. People were debating it, some saying I was too harsh, others saying I was a hero. I don't feel like a hero. I just feel like a man who did his job. I told my staff later that night that cases like this are the reason I don't retire. Because as long as there are people who think they are above the law because of their name, we need a bench that reminds them they aren't. Justice isn't just about the law books. It's about the soul of the community. Let me tell you what, I hope people learn from this story. We live in an age where everything is for show. We post our lives on social media. We chase likes. And sometimes we forget that there are real people on the other side of those screens and those snarky comments. Social media isn't real life. Real life is the way you treat the person who cleans your office, the person who serves your coffee, or the veteran standing at the door. If you think your status gives you the right to look down on anyone, you've already lost, no matter how much money is in your bank account. In my courtroom, I don't care about your followers. I care about your character. Respect isn't something you buy. It's something you earn through your actions. Arthur Higgins has my respect. Isabella Vance has a lot of work to do to earn it back. I hope she does. I truly do. Because nobody is beyond redemption, but everyone is subject to the law. That's what justice means to me. After 40 years on this bench, that's what I still believe. Thank you for listening.